Vic. It's a familiar story, unfortunately. Robert Spencer, author of The Complete Infidel's Guide to the Quran. Thank you for joining us. Is this the new normal for Europe, do you believe, these types of stories? Because it feels like we're hearing about them almost on a daily basis.
There's no doubt that it's the new normal for Europe. The Islamic State, ISIS, has called for these kinds of attacks. They've made a concerted effort to get people into Europe to launch these kinds of attacks from within the refugee influx. Remember that 2 of the Paris attackers last November were refugees. This man was an Algerian national who'd come into Europe in 2012. And so there are many, many others embedded among the peaceful refugees who are actually Islamic jihadis. There are going to be many, many more attacks like this one.
And the question is how much at risk is the United States? We know that Europe has struggled with this. They have a large number of migrant refugees, to your point, that have come in. What about the United States? Where are our vulnerabilities?
Our vulnerabilities are everywhere. As the more people, the more refugees that Barack Obama brings in, the more likely this kind of thing is to happen in the United States. Remember that Tashfeen Malik, the San Bernardino shooter, had passed 5 separate background checks from 5 different U.S. agencies. And so we're bringing in only refugees who are vetted and checked, and that vetting is completely useless.
What's interesting, and to that point, I want to get back to Europe and France. One of the suspects arrested in the death of the priest in northern France had been on their radar, very much so, even had a tracking bracelet on his ankle, and yet they were unable to stop this attack. But we don't have, I don't think anyone has, the resources to follow suspects 24 hours a day.
That's the ISIS strategy. And see, that man's tracking bracelet, it was actually turned off for 3 hours every morning, and that's when he did this attack. And the ISIS strategy is to overwhelm law enforcement in Europe and the United States with so many of these jihadis that we just can't possibly keep track of all of them, and it's working.
How do we stop this? And I would assume that you would believe this is going to continue. Will it increase in its frequency?
It's going to increase. There's just no doubt about that. That's 100% certainty. One of the things we have to do is really reconsider whether we need to bring these refugees in when the Saudis, for example, are taking absolutely none of them and attributing their refusal to the fact that there are terrorists among them. We ought to be able to do the same thing.
Very good points. Robert Spencer, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Appreciate your comments. All right, I want to get back to Donald Trump, who in about 24 minutes from now will be outlining his